The MoneroTopia Price Report segment is sponsored by Exolix, a privacy-focused, non-custodial instant crypto exchange. Go to exolix.com to enjoy secure and completely anonymous swaps with no KYC or sign-up. Swap between Monero and 2,000 plus assets at the most competitive rates and with no limits. Exolix.com, your fast and secure way to privacy.
You know, I was wondering
for price.
Yeah. I mean, everybody's sitting here watching these big wicks, these big candle movements.
This is exciting.
I was wondering, did y'all already cover the Samurai stuff? Where like they're supposed to be dropping the case against Samurai, but the DOJ is full of such evil, psychopathic scumbags that they're like basically refusing to do it, and then asking the court for more time while they think about maybe doing it after like they've already allegedly they've been ordered by the new administration to. I mean, they took away the Department of Justice's I don't know, office or branch for.
Yeah, I think we'll have that in the.
We have that
news.
in the news, but yeah,
Okay,
I personally I haven't looked that deep into it. Is that what's going on? That's
yeah,
wild.
They're just being scumbags basically. But what's new?
So
right?
they literally have the green light to like drop the charges. They're being told from up above, higher up, right? Drop the charges, and they're not.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
I wonder if the same thing's going on with Roger as well. Like maybe they've been ordered to drop that case and they're just like not doing it.
And here's what I'm saying. Like, so these are, we obviously there's a lot of Trump things going on. That's the same old, right? And we're creeping towards a technocratic. So we're already there, technocratic surveillance state, but he's further moving us towards it. But in terms of crypto stuff, there have been some good things that have happened that would not have happened otherwise if Kamala had won. Right? Ross
Yeah, I mean, I always
would not be
believed
free.
that they had to offer some concessions because the American people were really pissed off, and they weren't going to stand for another stolen election. So they had to let the guy in and do some basic stuff. But
they had to let some steam out of the pipe before it exploded.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I agree. So, but at least we're benefiting from that. So, you could say, is that better or worse? Would have been better to keep the steam in there so we could have a freaking revolution.
Yes. We would be vastly better off right now if everything just sucked ass and everyone knew that the government was bullshit and that it was a stolen election. Like you would see states talking about kicking the feds out. You would see active resistance and the kinds of things that produce real freedom. That would actually be happening, but it's not happening now. We just have to hope that the masters give us a few table scraps so that it's not so bad. Just lighten the burdens of our chains a little bit, please, masters. But people would be really pissed off and finding ways around the feds at this point. If that hadn't, like, if Kamala had won or whatever, if they had stolen the election again.
So, I mean, I guess we should be out there, like, trying to get the next left-wing lunatic elected here in the U.S. and just trying to go completely woke in all aspects of government and just letting it implode.
Somebody redesign the opening credits. Make them woke. Make them woke as fuck, bro.
I don't know, man, because that's what I'm saying. Like, I get what you're saying, but like, so that's never gonna happen. They're always gonna quell the populace. That's
they're really good at it. I mean, they've got. I mean, they've
and
got
obviously as long as they can print
exactly
fiat, they have infinite means to do it.
And they're trying to do that, right? Like Trump is like, "Yo, J-Pal, print us up some cash. We need some sweet cheese."
Yeah.
Although I don't know how much I believe any of that either. Like, there's a lot of WWE going around, that whole political stage.
Well,
I don't want to.
Yeah, but related, I don't know if you did. I did put up you tell me if this is true, but I think, is Monero one of the best performing assets in Trump's first 100 days?
Yeah.
It's got to be up. It's got to be up there.
Yeah, let's see if we can do a measurement. I got the
gold.
charts.
I guess gold. Did it perform better than gold since Trump's been in office? Yeah.
Let's see. Monero's been up 50% since January 1st. but I guess really we have to measure it from like January 10th or whatever. January 20th. Was it 20th? Currently, Monero's up 35%. I don't know if you guys want to put the charts up or not. I should be.
Oh yeah,
should be
I
sharing.
pulled up. I shared your screen. It's just a tab of the XMR chat.
Guys, send your super chats.
Yeah, let me stop sharing. And then
XMRchat.com.
have you put the wrong
Thank you
button.
for reminding me, though. Yeah, guys, please use super chats to send us your chats. You know, you don't have to donate a lot, although we do appreciate. We get some very generous donations, but even if you want to send a few cents, let's get that transaction count up.
Let me resize my screen here, fill up the whole space. I always forget to do this part because I can see that I'm not like completely. Yeah, there we go. All right. Yeah, you know, I haven't really, because it always changes, so I don't always take a look and say, okay, well, who's the best performing asset, you know, of the year, of the quarter, whatever. At the moment, Monero's up about 40% in terms of dirty fiat. And if we look at Monero versus gold, looks to me like Monero versus gold is probably, I guess we are up on the year. Right around there. Yeah, Monero has actually done better than gold to the tune of about 17%. So that's pretty cool.
Nice. So
yeah.
what other assets, right? So Trump's first 100 days, I mean, Monero's like the top performing asset.
Yeah, I guess I didn't really very carefully look at the first 100 days, but yeah, I mean, stock market's down from when he got in, 5% down. Currently 5% down. For a moment, it was 15% down. Yeah, I mean, Monero's done quite well. Has it done better than Bitcoin for the first? Oh, what am I doing?
I think so.
Yeah, it looks like Monero's up over Bitcoin for that same time period. Although we still have a long way to go just to get back to where it was. Even with that wick, you know, Monero is still trying to make it back to where it broke down from the Binance delisting. So, I mean, that's been a 1.5 year long saga, right? They did that and they bought themselves a 1.5 year. Well, they did that, but they also pumped the price of Bitcoin at the same time, right? So there's a little bit of that going on as well.
I wonder which crypto is the top performer in Trump's first 100 days. Maybe like Solana or something.
Oh, it's probably some new shitcoin that
fart coin.
Yeah.
or Trump. Well, no, Trump coin pumped and dumped, so I guess not Trump coin.
I mean, it's going to be something that had almost practically zero market cap that launched right around.
Okay, not including that then, like, you know, things that actually existed with the market cap. I don't know. It's just an interesting thing to. Obviously, it doesn't really mean much, but.
Yeah, I'm not really so inclined to. I mean, it's interesting. I kind of do the gee whiz thing when people post about which asset has done the best for the first 30 days of some new time frame of the year of assuming the presidency. I don't know, of the Chinese New Year. But yeah, no, Monero's done quite well though. It's been definitely one of the top performing assets, no doubt, for the past few months. So, all right, I guess we might as well get into it. So everybody knows by now, probably everybody knows that there was a hack. Some dude, I don't know if he was a maximalish at least. He got social attack heisted for about $330 million, and then the guy starts converting all of that into Monero. Did he market buy $330 million of Monero? No, he did not. I don't think there's even enough liquidity to support that. But he did start converting into Monero. And we saw big buying across the board using apparently a lot of instant swap exchangers. At least the heist almost certainly definitely happened. I expressed some doubt about that on Twitter, but I think it actually that did happen. I was not trying to say that it didn't happen on Twitter. I was just saying, hey, are we sure? Right? Let's not just jump to conclusions here because some dude said that it happened, right? And posted a Bitcoin address. Like, is this really a thing? And is that really the cause? And I think the answer to that is yes. There's a question is, are they flipping it into Monero and then flipping it directly back out of Monero? If they are, they're retarded because that's not doing anything for them. Some people online on Twitter seem to be probably a little bit too convinced that that's what they were doing. And I kept asking them for evidence, and they never really gave me that much. So I guess nobody really knows. But obviously, they didn't flip it all back into Bitcoin or all back into fiat, because the Monero price is still quite high. So from the breakout point right around here, Monero is still about 17% up. Went up about 40%, wicked up to a little bit over 320, 330. Let's go to the top of that. I guess that's 330. Currently, Monero sitting at 277. So, I mean, it's hard to think that someone would be smart enough to figure out how to heist all this Bitcoin and smart enough to know that they need to use Monero, because we didn't see Zcash. So let's go over here to the privacy shitcoins. We didn't see any privacy shitcoin movement. We didn't see Zcash do anything. Zcash kind of gave like this little wick for a moment. It wicked up, but then it came right back down. So a lot of that is, I mean, one thing that I know, do I have like any proof? No, but these guys are scumbags. They're liars. So I know what they do is when they see Monero pumping, they try to pump Zcash along with it to, try and pretend like that there's things going on there that really aren't. So they probably pumped Zcash, and then that wick came back down because there was no actual real buying for Zcash. I have to assume like this guy's not flipping into Zcash; he's flipping into Monero. Yeah. So it'd be interesting to know how much is he keeping, and what his real strategy is. But it'd be difficult to think that he was smart enough to do all that, but dumb enough to think, oh, I just go into Monero and then back out of Monero. There's a lot of people that think that, though. Like there are a lot of people that think that. So maybe. But okay, so this is kind of one of those things where it's like, was it TA? Was it fundamentals? I mean, the price was going to spike if the guy hacked it. Didn't matter when, like the price was going to spike up like that. But the chart also, I mean, guys, listen, the chart tells you things like, okay, are you running out of liquidity? Are you running out of ability to go to the downside? Is there any way to try and to do things like cap the price? Are there big sellers on the market so that it doesn't matter even if someone is making a big buy? There's a big bunch of volume sellers that are ready to take their profits, right? Those things are somewhat communicated by the price action. No matter how much you want to call it astrology, and certainly enough, some of the TA strategies might be dubious, right? And we might say, hey, those maybe aren't the best, most reliable TA indicators, etc. Right? We could argue about it, but the simple fact is that the price chart does communicate information. There's information in this chart. How well we can extract that information and make conclusions from it is still a question, is up for debate. But the point is that we've talked about this chart for quite a while. And for months and months, I've basically told you guys that, yeah, Monero was going to spend time consolidating in between in this upper blue band. And that's kind of classic action that I see. And without describing exactly what the mechanisms are, right, and saying this is exactly why this works or doesn't work, I had said, hey, don't expect to really get above this capping blue line for quite a long time. And last week was the first time that I said, we had the whole macro crash scare, and this was the lowest that we could go, right? This wick down here to 165 when the stock market was down 25%, right? And everyone was like, hey, are we about to crash? And Trump's, going to tariff the world super hard, super bigly. And then we said, hey, all that could happen to the Monero price was this one wick for one day. But realistically, like this was, the actual stopping point, the daily closes, right? We didn't even close that day that far down. Monero got down to 193, right? The daily closes only went down to like 195. And so last week I said, if the macro crash scare can't push Monero down any further, then I can't see what's going to, right? So last week was the first time I'd said, hey, it wouldn't surprise me to actually get above this line. Do I know it's going to happen immediately next week? No, but I said it wouldn't surprise me to get to 250 and higher and start pushing higher. And so because the liquidity was gone, there was no more selling pressure. People weren't interested in taking profits. That basically provided the opportunity for who knows what event, ? Right? Could be anything. But in this case, some hacker, some heister, some dude, some social engineer. Imagine putting that on your resume, social engineer. Some dude that stole some Bitcoin and needs privacy and went into Monero, right? This is the thing, right? That it was, we see this big price pump and we don't see it pulling back. We don't see it coming back down here. We don't see big sellers up here that are pushing the price back down because there are no sellers. I shouldn't say there's no sellers, right? But right? The order books for selling are extremely thin, and the order books for buying are heavier, right? More people are interested in buying. And the chart with its consolidation and all this pattern that we've seen really for the entire year, since the beginning of 2025, this consolidation inside of these blue band structures said, hey, this is a pattern that's ready to go to the upside. And so the combination of that, effectively, guys, we're probably, apart from like major macro crash type events, we're probably not coming back down here to 150, maybe ever, right? We're probably not going to get back into this kind of 175 to 200 range and then just sit there for a long time. Monero's probably going to spend time. I mean, who knows, right? Maybe this thing could go to the upside. Maybe the guy's got more to swap. Maybe more people are going to get excited about Monero because of the visibility, and they're like, wow, it's performing really well. Maybe we need to come back down and do some of this, right? But overall, we're looking to play in this range, right? We're looking to play in the 240 plus range, maybe up to like 300 for a period of time. I don't have good wave magic levels for you guys right here to tell you exactly, where to look for next. Hypothetically, we could use the upper blue bands. So the very, very highest moving standard deviations are the top blue bands right there. And hypothetically, at some point we would be looking to make our way to those bands. I'm not saying that it necessarily has to happen now, next week, tomorrow, but that's kind of the next spot that you would expect to hit. Hopefully this chart makes it a little bit clearer, right? So we're looking at the top here of 2021. Before Binance started. Actually, during this, while Binance was selling Monero that they didn't have, and then right around here in this area where they just shut down withdrawals for like 2 weeks. Anyways, these blue bands right here, we're looking at the very longest term upper moving standard deviation. You would want to try and hit that. But after that, I don't really have anything for you guys. After that, it's just pleb lines, right? So effectively, let's go to a little bit longer time frames. We could probably even clear the wave magic. We don't need that. From here we could probably look at just pleb lines, right? Draw on some pleb lines. So this guy right here, this is a pretty big line that you would look at if you were so pleb line inclined. And then we can draw this guy as well. So you got yourself kind of like this rising triangle. Let's delete that line. That was from a long time ago when we thought we had this cup and handle formation, and then that didn't play out. Okay, so yeah, basically we would be looking, so this line right here, if you remember, that represents the upper moving standard deviation. Let's make that blue so that that's easier to see. So if we're looking at pleb lines and you ask me for TA, I'm going to say maybe some consolidation. Maybe we want to hit the underside of this line. Months ago, I think I said at some point, Monero is likely to try and catch the underside of this line, of that pleb line. That's kind of, the price action that you expect. That's the kind of stuff we've seen from crypto in the past. You break it down, eventually the bull market gets back on, you pump bigly, and then, maybe this is probably a big confluence to look for. If the cabal can find ways, to keep putting the pressure on Monero and delist it from Kraken, or who knows, right? Whatever. Maybe they would try and say, no, this is going to be your capping spot, and then we'll have to come down and do this for some long period of time until we finally break out, like towards the end of the decade. Let's hope that's not what actually happens, but at least in terms of just TA, right? This is the kind of thing that could happen from the TA perspective, right? You could bump up against this line repeatedly until you finally break out. Hopefully not. Let's get the word out there and do all the things, and do all the shilling, and keep convincing hackers that they should convert into Monero, and maybe invite Lazarus to the next conference. Just kidding, guys. Don't hang me. I'm not a fan of North Korea. They are commies. Okay. So let's take a look at the Bitcoin versus Monero ratio, also breaking out obviously on the longer time frame. All right, let's clear the wave magic, and we'll go to a slightly longer time frame. You can see that we are still not doing great, right? We still have a long way to go. This was when they started fractionally reserving and pumping the other coins, right, with all their fake liquidity and their tethers. We were hoping that would be like the bottom, but it wasn't. And well, now they delisted from Binance, right? And then they kept pumping with all of their fiat liquidity, pumping that into Bitcoin. So anyways, we have a long way to go to really come back. We're still holding our own. This chart is still much better than almost every other shitcoin chart, which is just down, 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 down versus Bitcoin. Monero is still managing to hang on despite all the nonsense. So yeah, I mean, that's a good thing. Maybe let's go back to the wave magic here, go back to the daily, make sure I didn't miss anything key. One thing that you might say, I know it's kind of hard to see. So these right here, that's sort of like the absolute upper standard deviation, the lower standard deviation. The orange bands being the lower moving standard deviation. Like I said, I know it's hard to see, but this ish right there where I drew these white lines, that's kind of the standard deviation band. We could do things like I could reduce the filtering on this so that it's easier to see. Hell, maybe I'll just do that right now. Filtering constant. Wait, which version do I have here? I have different versions of this script. All right, I'm not going to play with this too much live on the air. Anyways, yeah, this thing is broken out. Hopefully we just keep moving to the upside. Probably, I mean, just again, from a TA standpoint, you would kind of like maybe do this for a while and then try to break out. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen. You know, highly dependent on where the rest of the crypto markets are going to go. You know, maybe I can share a thought that I had posted. It's basically like, you know, it's that same thing where people talk about markets, and particularly the maximalists. So on the one hand, you got these maxis, right? And they sit there and shake their fist at the TradFi and BigFi, and they're like, you know, and all the printing in the Federal Reserve, and they're like the traditional markets, the fiat, they inflate assets and they distort markets, and they're not Austrians. And they're Keynesians, and the financial system is unfair, and they just inflate, and they do all this inflation, and then they on the other, so they say that on one side of their mouth. On the other side of the mouth, maxis are like, big fi, traditional finance is adopting. They have to adopt. Now I know. Let's start these new companies. Let's like Jack Mallers and Michael Saylor. Let's use the fractional reserve system to pump Bitcoin, right? And they're like, that's a good thing. And then still, like, out of the other side of their mouth, in their very next breath, they say, well, the fair market has selected Bitcoin. It's like, wait, you guys just spent years explaining how traditional markets are fraudulent and they distort these assets, right? And then you spend all this time fapping to Michael Saylor and how he's, you know, in BlackRock adopting, and now traditional finance is using fiat to pump Bitcoin, and you're going to sit here and tell us that the fair market selected Bitcoin. You just got done telling us how distorted these markets are and how they do all the inflation. Oh, I guess it's as long as they're pumping Bitcoin, it's a fair market, right? So no, distorted, fraudulent insider markets selected Bitcoin, not the fair market. So figured I just wanted to go on that little rant because it is, I mean, that's what happens, guys. Like, that's exactly what's happened here. The distorted market has selected Bitcoin for the obvious reasons. We already know why, right? We know why they did that, because it's surveillance, because it's capped, and it's hilarious to watch what's happening now. They're all in knots over this whole, it's so stupid. They're so retarded. So, I guess we'll just I know it's not exactly price related, but maybe you guys are interested in this. I'll just cover it a little bit here. I'm not sure. Probably the news is getting to it, to this depth of what's happening. But basically, op return is exactly like our transaction extra in Monero, right? You can stuff arbitrary data there. It was limited to 80 bytes. They had tried to do Omni and Counterparty on Bitcoin years and years ago, and then Core kept reducing the size of op return so that you couldn't stuff arbitrary data into there, as a means of limiting what they call spam and preventing extensibility on Bitcoin. And then they quadrupled the block size so that you could use 3 megabytes to stuff JPEGs in it. I guess they did that either unwittingly or they either they did that on purpose or they did it unwittingly. Either way, that's pretty bad if you think about like how smart are these developers? How smart is Core to have done that? Yet I digress. Not Peter Woolley. What the hell is his name? Peter Todd. Was it Peter Todd or maybe it was Peter Woolley? Actually, I don't remember. One of the Peters put a pull request in, or put a merge or something, not a merge, a request in to GitHub to increase the size of op return. And so all the maxis are like, the main chain shouldn't be the JPEG storage site. It's like, it's already the JPEG storage site, but you know what's happening? BitVM was stuffing arbitrary data into UTXOs, right? So just like we have outputs, Bitcoin has UTXOs. They're stuffing arbitrary data into UTXOs because op return isn't big enough for them. And for whatever reason, they don't want to put that into the SegWit portion. They want to put that on the base transaction data portion. And so polluting the UTXO set is way worse because now you can't do indexing. And so you might as well give BitVM the space that they need inside of op return for the data, for the arbitrary data that they need to do their operations. Because otherwise they're just going to use the UTXO set. And that's like the worst of all worlds. and they don't really have a solution for it. But here's the thing: the funny thing is that all of the filterers and the maxis are like the hardest of the hardcore maxis. You know, they want the cat eating maxis, the Vatican worshiping maxis, of that sort of flavor and variety. They're running this version called Knots, which is supposed to filter all of the JPEGs and all that stuff, but then they accidentally filter like privacy transactions as well. Like, but they're like, no JPEGs, no extensibility, nothing. This is nonsense. We need to make this stuff. We need to figure out how to fix this. And they think that filtering is going to be the fix, even though like people just talk directly to the miners. And so they're all like crying about this, and they're all crying that no, this is bad. But actually, like increasing the size of op return is probably a good thing to do for the main chain that needs to be done. So like, and now they're all like, now they're like complaining, oh well, Core is censoring us, and I think y'all will get to that in the news. But anyways, I know I'm kind of like diverting off of price here. I guess it's just like my personal rant moment. Let's just go back to price. But anyways, that shit's hilarious because they're wrong. Like they're just totally wrong about it. But I support, you know, it's like I support Core in this case. And these guys are, who knows, maybe they're going to fork Bitcoin, hopefully. All right, I'll let you guys get more into that because it's just hilarious. So, all right, Monero price doing good, like we talked about, good stuff here happening. Maybe the hack isn't such a good thing, but I mean, you know, for all the hackers that refused to move their hacked funds into Monero and then they got pwned later, fuck you. You should have, like, you deserve that. First of all, you're a piece of shit for stealing people's money, but second of all, you're a retard, right, for not protecting your own privacy. So like, you could have kept your funds, but you didn't, right? Because you didn't go into something private, and well, you know, that's, I guess, you're just getting what you deserve. All right, let's look at privacy shitcoins. Pirate Chain has managed to make a bit of a comeback here. I don't know, maybe the hackers using using Pirate Chain. Pirate Chain up 42% from their bottom, actually more like 60% from the bottom. I wouldn't call this good price action. At least they're still plausibly inside of their falling wedge. This thing, they basically got saved by the bell here. Pirate Chain got saved by the bell when Trump decided to renegotiate the tariffs. I guess he's just the master of the art of the deal, renegotiating tariffs. Even though there was no negotiation happening, he negotiated with himself when China was like, we're not interested in talking to you, bro. And so, yeah, I think a lot of saving face might have been done there. Let's see, nothing too interesting happening with the rest of the privacy coins. I guess, Xano. Yeah, let's show the Xano chart. Probably you guys know what I would say about the TAT leaves on the Xano Wave Magic. But here's what it looks like. Make your own decisions. Decide if you're going to buy or sell Xano, or just none of the above, right? You're not going to buy, you're not going to sell, you're just not going to touch it. I'm not interested in it, guys. I just don't see what it has. No use case. Then it's going to have Tari competing with it, and Fluffy is a rock star in the Monero world, so, and in the privacy space. So I don't know, Xano's going to have some problems there probably when Tari hits the streets. So Zcash not doing much either, a little bit up, you know. It's kind of looks, again, it looks like it's just consolidating. We talked about this last week. Looks to me like it's kind of falling volatility, right? You've got oh, why are we in white? Let's go back to white. Okay, yeah, you can see that basically it's kind of got this pennant formation maybe kind of going on. So I probably expect that to continue unless there's like some fundamental thing, liquidity expansion, whatever, that could send Zcash one way or the other. But for now, probably just going to continue ranging and decreasing in its volatility. Okay, let's go to Bitcoin. See what's going on with the Bitcoin. Basically, actually, this one I'm gonna toot my own horn. I'm gonna pat myself on the back. Last week I told you guys, don't expect this to immediately go to the top here, right? It's gonna get there, but you know, maybe it's gonna need some time here to go chop sideways. So obviously the Bitcoin price gods were listening, and they did what I told them to do. Ultimately, we are still drifting towards the upside. Things are still moving to the upside. Bitcoin is very likely going to make that 100,000 mark. Going to touch these blue bands here. That's a solid short, right? You get here. That's a solid spot to short, especially about right around here, right? So that would be, what would that, $101,000 and $110. Sorry, $101,110. I don't know if I can say numbers in English. Shit. Anyways, definitely can't say them in Spanish. Yeah, so once you hit around 100K, that's a good shorting spot. I would probably, the perfect, you know, entry would be somewhere around $101,000 on per Bitcoin. It's probably a good spot to short. How long will that short stay valid, open? I don't know. It really probably just depends on what the markets think about whether Trump is going to start negotiating with himself again. raise tariffs. We'll have to play that by ear. I think that'll come up. Shit, when was that? Maybe May, June, July. So is that I need to look this up. It's not relevant yet, but it'll get relevant here in the next few weeks probably. But yeah, like the market, they're going to revisit the tariffs again. Probably there'll be a bunch of oscillation and volatility increases in the market. Okay. Ultimately, I still don't see where's the liquidity going to come from to really, truly pump markets to new highs. Bitcoin dominance, I said preference shitcoins slightly, but this is why I was kind of like hesitant to like be like alt season, because Bitcoin has just continued to move up. So yeah, BlackRock doesn't, they don't feel like pumping any altcoins at the moment. The traditional fiat system doesn't really want to pump altcoins. That kind of makes sense. Ultimately you really do kind of want to keep people locked into Bitcoin. I do think that these guys, like, I do think they're kind of concerned about even Ethereum, right? Ethereum didn't care about the OFAC transactions. Ethereum didn't give a shit about, like they were just continued to process Tornado Cash transactions through that whole time. So they have shown some kind of level of censorship resistance. Maybe it's not fair, right? They didn't do a fair launch or whatever, and they did all this pre-mine. All right, whatever. Bitcoin had their ASICs, and half the early coin got lost. And then so the ASIC holders centralized the Bitcoin supply. So shut up, Bitcoin's as centralized in supply as Ethereum is. So whatever. But Ethereum has all these contracts and all these people doing all this stuff like outside of the system. Like there's the promise that like there's going to be, so there already are derivatives platforms to trade currency pairs on like Ethereum layer 2s and do all this stuff. So again, what I'm getting at here is that Bitcoin is useless. It doesn't do shit. Nobody can use it for anything except for occasionally people, like it'll see these big influxes of people like, oh, well, I can process my transactions, bro. Yeah, you can, bro, because everybody left the fucking chain to go somewhere else because every time we try to use it, it clogs up. And then so people go elsewhere and they stop using it, right? Like they use Tether now. Congratulations on limiting Bitcoin. So now everyone can use Tether on Ethereum and on Tron and on Solana. Anyways, but still, in terms of price, like I think that the cabal still does really probably want to keep the spotlight on Bitcoin. That's the whole point here. So yeah, congratulations to all the maxi bros that knew that the government fiat was going to keep their bags going for them. I don't think they quite thought of it that way, but they happened to be right for the wrong reasons, but good for them. Okay, let's look at the Z-scores. Monero obviously did crazy big pumps. And the Z-scores reflect that. We still see a spattering of coins here, right? So we've got Bitcoin, we've got BCH is actually doing fairly well, and we see Tron still continuing to perform. So that's kind of interesting. Everything else is still sort of lagging behind here. So I don't know what the story is there, but really here's the story. There's only so much liquidity that's available right now. And when there's only so much liquidity available, it can only make its way into certain assets. So you're going to see some assets being pumped while the rest get left behind. And then you'll see some kind of reversal. So right now it's BCH and Tron. Maybe those guys will reverse at some point and we'll see a few other currencies pumping, but it's not a big broad pump of everything, right? It's not the everything pump because the liquidity hasn't been injected yet. JPOW is still like worried about the inflation or whatever, and they probably should be. At some point, they're not going to do that liquidity pump until they absolutely have to, right? They're going to try and hold it back. And then once they absolutely have to rescue the markets, because that's, the system left to its own devices, the system will produce deflation eventually. First inflation, then deflation. But ultimately, the system deflates and collapses on its own weight, absent intervention. So they generally try to wait as long as they can in between interventions. So don't expect the big liquidity pump to happen just yet. Which again is why I'm like, hey, Bitcoin price here at 101,000. That's probably the spot to look for. That's probably the spot to think, hey, maybe it's time to get short again, and just wait. Right. So there could be some oscillation. It could take a while. Ultimately, this thing, I believe, I still have the macro crash thesis on the board here. It just doesn't have to happen immediately, right? It doesn't have to be like the C word in 2020. It could be the long kiss goodnight. It could be the slow death, kind of like 2008 happened, or the .com, right? It took a long time for that crash to happen. And people at every point thought, oh, hey, we're going to reverse now, but then it didn't. So what's interesting here to me is that oil, so the markets are actually performing relatively well, but oil itself is not performing that great. So we've got oil here down at below $60 a barrel again. So clearly, clearly in the red zone, even more so in the red zone. This indicates that, people, apparently the market still expects, they still expect the global economy to slow down and the demand for oil to drop, right? Because oil prices are still falling. So that's not a good sign in general. Like that's not a good sign for the notion of a healthy, vibrant economy that's producing a lot of trinkets and toys to ship internationally from China, and also your Nikes and your sweaters from Thailand or wherever, Vietnam. Yeah, so the market is still apparently anticipating some kind of downturn and not really bullish on the oil price. Let's see, gold. We can take a look at gold here. It's still like, I mean, this chart is still crazy. As we talked about, gold tagged that upper line, that upper purple band. Let's put the stats on here. Statistics summary. Yep. So you can see right there, we tagged it perfectly with perfection. I hate to think that this could be the top in gold, but it might be. Right now, apart from this touch of that line right there, this is actually still a very bullish structure, right? So you got this going on. You could just say, hey, gold is just going to come down here to the purple bands, and then it could come do this. It's possible, right? That could still happen. But overall, like the statistics would say that the top is basically in for gold, guys. I don't know anywhere else that I want to go, to be honest, because I'm not comfortable or confident in any of the rest of the economy at the moment. I'm not sure if there's really anywhere to get any gains but I don't know. Gold has done so well for me. Do I want to abandon it at its glorious heights, and say, try and better deal gold? I don't know if that's what I want to do. So I've been thinking about it. I'll probably just keep holding it, at least the physical to have. There's no reason to sell it. Just the friction that you incur when you get in and out of gold is pretty significant. So probably I won't sell that. Maybe I'll find another way to sell some of the other stuff that I may or may not hold. I cannot confess anything on live on air. Don't want to tell you about my hodlings. Okay, let's take a look at the stock markets. Stock markets have continued to make rebounds. This is basically kind of what we expected the stock markets to do. I feel like this is kind of intuitive here. I can't tell you for sure, but I feel like where it is right now is I wouldn't expect gains in the stock market next week. I would expect this thing to stop here for a moment. Probably need to do a little bit of this. Overall, maybe the stock market could make it up to these levels, right? Maybe that's a little bit high. From somewhere between here and here, right? I know that's here and here, right? So I guess for people listening, that would be about 5,900 for the S&P, maybe all the way up to like 6,000. But that'll be probably the stopping point for the stock market for a period of time. And then we'll just have to wait and see, right? Is the grand negotiator going to negotiate with himself to give us better deals or worse deals? We don't know yet. We'll have to see. Same thing with the NASDAQ. NASDAQ has continued to pump. Currently up 20% off of those lows, off the swing lows, and currently only 9% down, 9% off its all-time highs that it set earlier this year. So, but yeah, I mean, currently still, I would expect the stock market to take a pause this next week before maybe trying to make its way a little bit higher. Honestly, guys, I'm not sure. I don't know if I could tell you what's going to give you gains at all this week. Are there going to be any gains? Maybe the bonds will give you some gains if you're inclined to playing with bonds. Nothing important with bonds here. They're just kind of chopping sideways still. It looks to me like overall the yield curve continues to uninvert. Maybe 25% down on the stock with the scare was enough for now, I guess. I don't know. Yeah, if this thing's going to do anything, it's going to take longer to get there, right? We don't see anything troubling with the bond market, so we're not looking at the resumption of the macro crash like right now at this exact moment. So, yeah, if you're long, you could just stay long. You can let the markets drift higher. It's almost always safer to be long than it is to be short because there's the possibility that I'm wrong just in general. So, right, and then the markets make new all-time highs, so that could happen. Typically, the market just doesn't crash and die forever. It eventually recovers. So it's typically a lot safer to be long than it is to be short or to not be in the market at all. So anyways, if you're long, you could basically probably just stay long. We got some numbers on the unemployment. It actually just was flat. I was kind of like, hey, is this thing going to tick up? It's still like, I don't know if they're like juicing these numbers, guys, because this looks sus. This looks really suspicious to me. Where it's like, hey, the SOM rule was hit, but then it stops, right? And it kind of does this. It wouldn't surprise me if they're lying, if they're juicing these numbers, because if this thing continues going to the upside, it's a foregone conclusion that there's a recession. And speaking of recession, we got some GDP numbers as well. And supposedly the GDP was positive, but they always go with a higher positive number on the initial announcement of GDP. So right now it says 1.1% year over year growth for the last quarter. The one before that, so the numbers that we got on January 1st, right? Or the number, sorry, Yeah, the numbers we got on January 1st. We didn't get them on January 1st, but it sort of represents like Q4 of last year. Anyways, that was like minus 2.87 ultimately, I think is where that settled out. But if you'll remember, this number, we were looking at this week by week, and it was changing all the time because they revised the numbers. And that's another way for them to kind of like lie without lying. Be like, oh, well, we're not trying to lie. We just got more data. We processed more data now. And now we have a better idea of what the GDP was. Even though like they're surveilling everything, they're pretending like they don't actually already know because they've already got all that information. They just have to like, they're not supposed to have it, so they can't say that they have it. We know they have it, so they pretend like they're revising the GDP number. So anyways, expect this number 1.1% to be revised somewhat. Obviously, you probably already know that I expect that to be revised downward. So let's see if this thing ends up negative again. Maybe not. Let's see. Housing market. The housing market hasn't recovered to the level that like you expect to see bounce, and this thing is not really bouncing that much, right? The housing market is having trouble moving towards the upside, and probably elevated rates are weighing on the markets, right? People are locked into their whatever house they're in. They got to stick with it because they got the old rates, they got the low rates, and they don't want to sell their house and incur a new mortgage with higher rates. The housing market just has low volume in general, and is going to have a hard time really making any big strides, any big moves towards the upside. But that's probably good because rent's already high enough, right? And the houses are already ridiculously, stupidly, retardedly, disgustingly overpriced. Like housing is just, it's insane. It's insane how much it costs to buy or build a house. And I mean, you're talking like
It's
basic few, 3-bedroom starter homes. So what's that, bro? All right.
I was saying, tell me about it. It's depressing.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, even where you're at, like you're kind of out in the country and it's still crazy high out there.
Yeah, where I should live, it should be like, I mean, 4 years ago it was way cheaper than it is now. Like within the span of 4 years, like property values have gone up like 50 to 100%.
All these millionaires in America now, how many liquid millionaires are there? It's maybe a better question to ask. Yeah, because every boomer's got their house that's like $750,000 contributing to their to their parent net worth. But it's like a house is kind of a liability, unfortunately. Like we should build houses better where they're not a liability, but they're kind of a liability in a way, just because they require so much maintenance. I think that's all I got for you guys today. So I think we've covered everything, talked about all the stuff. Yeah, I wouldn't, maybe like Monero can probably keep gaining throughout this week. I'm not saying that it necessarily will. Don't quote me on that. But at this point, I couldn't tell you for sure where Monero goes. It looks like it's consolidating, trying to get back towards the upside. And if this dude has to flip 330 million into Monero, that's going to be a lot of positive price pressure to, for him to get there. Because again, what we didn't do? I wanted to look at the volume. I wanted to show you guys the volume. Let's do like the replay. Let's do the hourly replay on what happened here. So we got the volume on the bottom. We're going to pin this to a new left scale. And let's maybe that's too much. All right, that's too much, yeah. Okay, so you can see it on the left scale here when the volume buying started. I added all this up. I did a ish, kind of math, kind of wagged it, right? Wild ass guessed it. It looked to me like this guy, like this buying volume was something along the lines of about 30,000 Monero total, which, sounds like a lot, but that's really only like maybe $10 million in terms of USD Monero purchased. So, you kind of have to make an estimation. Like, so for example, this green candle, I just assume all of the volume on this candle was buying volume, right? So on the left, you can see on the left, that's about 6,000 Monero in that single hour was purchased on Kraken, right? And then over here, okay, this was probably all selling volume, right? Was that him selling, or was that people just like, swing traders trying to sell it as well, or profit takers or whatever? I don't know. So you kind of, and then, okay, so here on this candle right here, this was almost no change ultimately, up, down, it was about the same. So here on this candle, you say, okay, that's 1.9 thousand Monero, but half of, as much buying happened as there was selling approximately. So then the buyer, assuming that the buyer represented all the buying volume there, probably only bought about 900 Monero. And if you add it all up across all of these candles here, I estimated probably about 30,000 Monero was bought on Kraken. But that would also be assuming that he wasn't turning around and selling it. Hopefully he's not, like, maybe he's not that retarded. He did divide.
Yeah, that would have been really stupid if that's like the first thing. The second thing he did was then also.
Yeah. what he might have done, so he might have used the instant swap exchanges to be buying Monero while he was also buying Monero on Kraken, but then selling on Monero, or sorry, on Kraken, maybe selling the Monero that he had bought from the instant swap exchanges, which would also be pretty stupid as well.
It would be yeah.
I mean, he's probably I don't know if maybe he's a retard. It's possible, I guess.
I don't think he sold any of the Monero. Because like I think, because what it looked like if we look at like the price action, and then like also what's up with the volume. So like obviously there was a lot of volume going through because this guy was buying a ton of Monero, but it sounds like he didn't even get that far. Like maybe like 10, 15 million. The volume even after the event happened has been like way higher than it was before, which is really interesting to see. But also the price did not go back down to the pre-pump. It hit 250 for a little while, but so far it's been staying above 270 most of the time. So
yeah, let's put the volume moving average on here to make that very clear for people. Yeah, I mean, that's like you said, like the price hasn't gone back down. So has he sold some? Maybe, I don't know, probably, but has
I have
he?
a feeling he hasn't, and it was just like people, just like the speculators taking some profit, assuming it would go back down, but it didn't end up going down that much. Now from like the peak, which was like 330, I think Mexi was reporting 390. Kraken definitely wasn't reporting 390, but like from like 325, 330 to the peak to 250, yeah, that's a pretty decent swing. But where it's sitting at now, it's nicely in between those two ranges, and it never went back down to 240. It never hit 240 again. So
Mexi has hardly any Monero, anyways. They're the new Binance. They're fraudulent scumbag exchange is what they are, and they will surprise KYC you despite pretending like there's no KYC. I think everybody here knows that, but yeah, they keep shutting down withdrawals. So they're fractional reserve on Monero. They're trying to absorb as much buying pressure as they can. They're a bad actor.
Props to Kraken. During this event, like in the midst of it, I was like, you know what? I have a little bit of Monero on Kraken. Like most of mine's not, but I have some on Kraken. I'm just gonna withdraw all of it, and I did, and I got it within 3 minutes. So,
yeah, actually, man, that's a really good point. The fact that Kraken hasn't shut down their withdrawals, despite some dude on there like just cleaning out their order books and pulling that coin off their exchange, I have to presume he didn't leave it there because that would be manifestly stupid. That's a good sign that they have the Monero they say they do. He's just cleaning out their order books left and right and pulling all that Monero off. If Kraken didn't have that, they wouldn't be able to keep they would have been able to service your withdrawal. So
they had no issues at all. So props to Kraken for being the only decent exchange in existence.
Seriously.
Now Kraken was really just providing, because he went through instant exchanges. Obviously he's not going through Kraken because he's not KYC.
I think he went through. I think he's taken all paths. I think he's trying to clean out as much liquidity as he can. Oh,
yeah, but how would he even be interacting on Kraken then? Like,
because I don't think they knew that the hack had happened just yet.
Yeah, because if he did it before it happened, he would have been fine. Now it's too late, right? Now in order to advise Monero now, he needs to.
I'm talking about the hacker, right?
Yes, the same guy. Yep, he sent
steals his Bitcoin
potentially to Kraken as well as using the instant exchanges. Body was theorizing.
So then
as many ways
they have an ID associated with this guy, whether he has a fake Kraken account or something.
He could have totally had fake KYC. Like these things are not super hard to bypass. Like KYC is not that effective. It's very possible.
Yeah, like basically, so he would have taken the coin, he divided it into a bunch of smaller amounts, and then deposits that on a Kraken. Or maybe he flipped it. He flipped the Bitcoin into USDT or something, and then deposited that onto Kraken. And that can be a little bit hard for them to follow, right? At least in the hours after a major hack, they might not know about it. Let's look at the Kraken.
My point is they definitely have data on some type of data on this guy if he went through Kraken. Even if he has fake KYC stuff, there's things to learn from that. Try to figure out who this.
Yeah, they probably do have some.
I mean, that seems very risky, right? Like the smartest thing for him to have done would be to just.
You should have used
keep
EXEH while they
keep
were still
acquiring
open.
Monero, keep pumping it, and just like pump up the market cap of Monero. You have so much. $300 million worth of Bitcoin, right? That he could ultimately put into the Monero. And he could be then sitting there with,
if you're him,
millions of dollars and
That's what he tried doing, though. I mean,
Yeah,
he
that's
he
exactly what he
didn't do all
did.
of it.
right. But I'm saying continue to do so, right?
Well,
okay, so he
what
has
I'm
a
guessing,
window of opportunity. To
That
do
would be
this
the
going
great
up
escape.
track.
The great escape is you put all essentially he walks away with hundreds of millions of dollars, many hundreds of millions of dollars
the
worth
thing
of
is,
Monero.
though,
He
at
walks away with
some
$1 billion
point,
worth of Monero, and he took the market cap 100x.
listen, at some point, that address became like by the time that Zach XBT is like posting the information, it's too late for him. He can't use any of these AML exchanges to, assuming
no,
he's
it's fine.
doing directly from the Bitcoin. He can't do it anymore. It's too late. So now he has to go through avenues if he can. If there's any alternative to EXCH because they're shut down already. He has to go through avenues of like no AML checks in order to continue, and that's where liquidity is going to be like even lower. So
Now, what's happening with these exchanges, right? These instant exchanges, and I guess even Kraken, because at the end of the day, they're now receiving blacklisted Bitcoin, right? Marked Bitcoin that was stolen. What now happens with that Bitcoin that they have? Like, how do they now get?
They're gonna
stuck?
have
No,
to.
they're fine. It's not their fault. The government's like, oh, okay, well, you reported it, and
Yeah, but it's
you
so
know.
it's basically stolen property, right? So the person who got hacked, who had the Coinbase account, can sue these exchanges and try to get
they
Bitcoin.
can't. They can't. That's
Yeah, they
and
can
you
because it's
actually
not
asked me
money.
a relevant legal question, right?
Because
It is
it's
a
not
relevant
money. Yeah, it's
Well,
the
that's
it's the
kind of a
bona
gray area
fide.
there.
I actually did a show on this years ago. Yeah, I mean it's old legal theory, right? It's common law, but the common law applies to cash, to money, and it's basically where the importance of fungibility derives from. Because you can't have a money system where people can then essentially sue and ask for their stolen money back, right? Because nobody would ever want to receive money unless they knew, with 100% certainty that this money wasn't, previously stolen from somebody else. And basically, money is treated differently ultimately than property because the same rule doesn't apply to property. If somebody steals your property and then goes and resells it, you can try to obtain that property back. You wouldn't be able to do the same with cash, but with property you can, and Bitcoin is definitely more property-like than cash-like because it has this traceability. Because the very fact that you can trace it and show that it was stolen, and you could determine where it rightfully came, that gives it this feature where it's now more property-like than cash-like in the eyes of the law.
Yeah, I feel like there was yes, what you're saying is absolutely correct about cash. Like there's been these court cases, these litigations where like people were like, this is the exact bills that were stolen from me, and I can trace it to the bank, and then they try to sue the bank to give them back those bills. And the court's like, no. Money is declared fungible by law. And so you can't actually sue the bank through no fault of their own. They ended up in possession of your specific dollar bills or $100 bills or whatever. I don't know in terms of
if I steal $1 million from you, cash, right? And I go on Craigslist and I buy a car from somebody with the cash. The person who sold the car receives the stolen cash. I receive the car. You have, in the U.S., based on common law, you cannot now go sue that person who sold the car and get the cash back. Right? That's currently how things are interpreted in the law. But if the car was stolen, that person can come after me. The person I bought the car can come after me for their stolen property.
yeah.
And so, is Bitcoin more like the
AI
car,
right now
or more like the cash? And I actually did a great Monero talk on this years ago because somebody wrote a paper on it. Did like a legal paper on this very concept. And
Well,
he
so
came to
has crypto been seized from exchanges to return back to the original, like stolen crypto that ended
I
up on
don't
exchanges?
know.
Does that end up back at the original property holder?
That's what I'm basically asking. I don't know. Has that I don't know. That's kind of what I'm asking because I mean, according to this guy at the time, a couple of years ago, he was saying that Bitcoin is more property-like and will be treated more like that versus like how the law is traditionally treated cash. Because it has this traceability, because you are in fact able to see where it came from.
Yeah, I'm trying to read up here on just to see what AI has to say. It says that courts have developed specific mechanisms to compel exchanges to assist in recovery. Yeah, I mean, okay, duh, we know that. Something about disclosure orders against crypto exchanges that require them to reveal information regarding the identity and location of the owners connected to the fraud. I don't know. It's not being terribly specific here in whether or not exchanges have been compelled to. The recovery process through exchanges. When stolen cryptocurrency reaches an exchange, victims have specific legal pathways that don't exist with cash. Courts have established that freezing injunctions can be used to overcome anonymity. They can freeze accounts. It's still not saying whether or not the victims end up. It said something about like exchanges sometimes will transfer stolen funds into a government-controlled address. So I guess there's that. Obviously, they blacklist addresses, but yeah, none of this is really challenges in exchange-based recovery. Despite these tools, recovering cryptocurrency through exchanges isn't without challenges. Jesus, this is such a useless blathering of. This is sometimes so. Like right here, AI is not being terribly. Let's see the Bitfinex case. Talks about the Bitfinex hack. All right. I didn't get an answer from Claude in this case specifically. It was the one I was asking. Yeah, I mean, no, you're right. Like, I think I guess it's got to be still a bit of a gray area. Can victims go to the exchange and say, hey, this was stolen Bitcoin. You have to give it back to me. I think the government just inserts their grubby little fingers and has required the exchanges to transfer that Bitcoin to government wallet addresses where the government can take their cut. And maybe the victims get something later. I don't know. But I mean, you raise a good point. You raise a good point about whether that's property or not.
Yeah, I did a Monero talk on it. Actually, it was an interesting topic, and I've always been very interested in this because ultimately that's obviously what I see as the flaw in Bitcoin, right? Because it's then not functioning as money.
If it was fungible by its very nature, then you wouldn't have to ask the legal question in the first place because the fungibility, like the actual fungibility of the asset itself would function to be like, well, it doesn't matter. You can't prove there's no evidence to say that this Monero, or in this case, Bitcoin, if it was fungible, you wouldn't be able to say that was stolen.
It's called it's called the bona fide purchaser doctrine.
That's so funny how the things that the declarative fungibility of cash still like requires the law to say that it is fungible and then make rulings on that basis to pretend like it's fungible, even though sometimes cash isn't. Yeah. Whereas like if it was actually fungible, it wouldn't even be an issue. Like you wouldn't have to have a court case about it. It would just function that way.
Exactly. Yeah, under the UCC and common law, money is considered a negotiable instrument that can pass free of prior claims when acquired by a holder in due course or a bona fide purchaser.
He's bona fide.
He's bona fide.
Hey, one thing I wanted to say here, still about Kraken and the volume and the hack here. We're looking at the XMR BTC chart on Kraken. We're looking at the 1 hour, and I have the volume pulled up. And what you can see is, so on the left here is the volume rate. That's 2,500 at the very, very max. That was 2,500 Monero purchased. The total volume on here for XMR BTC is nowhere near the volume that we saw for XMR USD on Kraken, right? Where we're seeing numbers. You're seeing many candles here of 7,000, 6,000, 5,000 XMR being purchased on Kraken. So what I'm getting at is that it's interesting that the guy he hacked Bitcoin, or he stole some Bitcoin, but the primary liquidity happening on Kraken was versus US dollar. not versus Bitcoin. So yeah, I wonder if he wasn't swapping that into like USDT or something. So maybe we'll check XMR USDT, see what that liquidity looks like. Oh wow, holy shit. Okay, yeah, so that's maybe what happened here. Okay, because 70,000 Monero. Oh, that's Qcoin. No, we can't trust them. They're fucking liars. That's not right. XMR USDT. All right, that's my fault. Kraken, here we go. XMR USDT on Kraken. Yeah, okay, but we're not seeing much swappage for USDT either on Kraken, right? We're looking at like 1,000, a few candles of 1,000 here, a handful of candles that show 1,000 XMR being purchased. The primary liquidity on Kraken was versus USD. So that's really interesting. I'm trying to understand why that would be. Maybe it's because the instant swap exchanges were using Kraken as their liquidity point, and they were just trading actual US dollars instead of as their means for acquiring more Monero to service the instant swaps that this guy was doing. Like maybe the Kraken volume is kind of a secondary effect as opposed to a primary one. I think unless someone has like really more specific information on that, I could only speculate there.
Yeah, ChatGPT is saying Bitcoin is property, not legal tender. U.S. courts treat Bitcoin as personal property. Therefore, the bona fide purchaser doctrine does not protect downstream recipients the way it does. Basically saying, yes, likely, the person who had their Bitcoin stolen could go after the, exchange for the Bitcoin. But yeah, the question is, has that happened?
I haven't heard of that. Like, I mean, and just because I haven't heard of it doesn't mean it hasn't happened, but I don't think we've heard of that too much. It's like the exchanges are given this, like, somehow they're afforded some kind of legal protection. I bet you this is one of those slimy things that happens in the background with regulators, where the regulators like, well, technically speaking, you have all this Bitcoin that every, 1/3 of all the Bitcoin on your exchange is sourced, at some point to some hack somewhere. So if you don't want to play ball with us, we could just go to court and say that, hey, this is stolen property, and then go return it to the people, to the victims of the theft. And then you're going to lose 1/3 of your Bitcoin, and you have no more recourse. So you better do what we say. We're going to take you to court over this. I bet you that they use that on the back end to twist their arms. You'd have to ask Mr. Baldy Brian Armstrong, Mr. Armstrange, if that's the case or not. He'd probably tell you yes.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, if I was the guy who had my 300 mil stolen, I'd certainly be pursuing this avenue.
Yeah. If you had any money left to pay your lawyers.
Yeah.
I do know of a case individually where a instant swap exchange was requested to give up some Bitcoin that they had taken to swap that was stolen because their AML checks didn't catch it.
What was the resolution of that one?
They gave up the Bitcoin. Yep. Or to avoid any further legal complications.
Interesting. All right, buddy. What else you got?
That's all I got, bro.
I did see, buddy, because I want to get your take on this. I know you're the ultimate Xano skeptic. Me, I'm a little bit more friendly to Xano. For two reasons, or a couple of reasons. Obviously, I always say right because Andre, but also the other primary reason is because I was always interested in this idea of an algorithmic private stablecoin, and that was kind of the promise of Xano. One just launched, and I'm curious if this is actually something that can withstand the test of time, or is a theoretical impossibility like Haven, or it's more like MakerDAO. Let me quickly bring this up, actually. Where is it? The Freedom Dollar. I just saw this morning. Maybe this is why Xano's pumping. Maybe not. I don't know. Who knows? It's such a small market cap coin. It could be anything. Let's. Oh, you got to take down your thing.
Oh, sorry. I got you.
So yeah, this Freedom Dollar. So it's basically backed by Xano.
Oh my fucking god.
So it's an algorithmic stablecoin backed by Xano. Is this something that could be legitimate, or do you think
No.
there's, it's
No.
an impossibility?
0%.
No, not even any smart
0%
features
chance.
on Xano.
Now, why? Because
Literally
we're
impossible.
saying it's basically like a haven, or I mean, how does MakerDAO do it?
MakerDAO does it by actually backing DAI with USDC, USDT, and a whole spattering of stable coins that are backed allegedly by reserves. Not there's this algorithmic component to it, and that helps to stabilize the price algorithmically. But the fundamental basis of the value of DAI rests on the fact that it's backed by other stable coins, and those stable coins are backed by actual dollars. They're not. Tether is not an algorithmic stablecoin. USDC is not an algorithmic stablecoin. Assuming they have the assets that they say they do, they should be. They're stable because of that. Those assets backing them. Yeah. They've got their liquidity bots and their market makers that ensure that peg stays there. But generally speaking, it's not like an on-chain smart contracts algorithmic voodoo magic that keeps the price pegged. And all the coins, every single coin that has tried to do that and be a pure algorithmic stable coin has crashed and burned and destroyed a lot of people's wealth and value. So, and just the fact that Xano doesn't actually have like true smart contracts, like run far away. This is not like
I want it to be true. I want an algorithmic stablecoin. That's what I was so excited about Xano.
know.
Yeah, it's literally because there's no smart contract features. It's literally impossible, isn't it, buddy? To do
Whoa.
algorithmic stablecoin.
they probably have some clever things going on to get around that. But I mean, even if they did have smart contracts, I would still say run far away. Danger, Will Robinson.
All right. So you're saying it's like no different than a Havino. They fundamentally have the same issues as that. Haven would have.
Or I already forget the name. The biggest one that crashed and burned.
Oh, Luna? Was that Luna?
Yeah, Luna, Terra Luna.
Okay, so
Classic.
It's like it can last while it does until you get some kind of major downturn where the thing backing it crashes in value, and just then you enter a death spiral.
Yeah. They show the Xano reserved. So there's basically what, 100,000 Xano? No, $1 million worth of Xano backing $100,000 worth of this.
How do you see
stablecoin.
that?
I don't know. Oh, here we go.
Let's see. And so
Transparency, see, follow these steps to create a view-only Xano wallet that tracks the publicly verifiable Freedom Dollar Reserve address. This allows anyone to confirm that Xano balance held as reserve. So you could see the amount of Xano's
price is currently $11.50. So if they have 100,000 Xano backing it, that would imply 1.1 million or 1.15 million in terms of value, right? Of the actual value of the Xano backing it. Maybe that floats somehow. The other thing too is like you have to realize that $1.1 million worth of Xano sold on the open market is not worth $1.1 million. You're going to get slippage. So that's like another.
Oh, here we go.
In terms of design, that would be.
Yeah, of course. How FUC keeps its value. Over collateralized safety buffer. FUSD is backed by far more value than it issues. Each FUSD token worth $1 is supported by a reserve of the cryptocurrency Xano. At launch, FUSD is roughly 10 times over collateralized. Then they say collateral grows naturally over time. How? First, when new FUSD is sold into the network, the Xano paid by the buyers goes straight into the reserve, increasing the backing for all FUSD. Second, the market-making bot can earn a slight profit on every sale or purchase of ZRD, further adding to the strength of the collateralized reserve. So the bot that's trading back and forth is putting all the profits into the reserve. Third, the reserve Xano. Is this how like Luna and these other ones worked, or is this like unique?
I never really looked too deeply into how their algorithm was set up, but yeah, I mean it's.
Oh,
it's
the third thing
basically-
is saying, and then all the Xano that is backing it is staked, so then it's earning obviously, staking rewards. As it's.
I mean, they're not the
there,
first
and
ones
that's
to
going
try
on.
over collateralization as the means of backing.
Interesting. Well,
My thinking is that if-
wanted to let you get the word
These
out.
big major projects were unable to figure out how to do algorithmic stablecoins, and many of them have tried and failed. And the one that got the closest was MakerDAI, but they eventually had to back DAI with actual stablecoins. And then
Ironic.
something. What was it that happened recently? Maybe Tux, if you remember, I don't know, but something happened where like they got compromised effectively. Like the guy that made MakerDAI suicided allegedly in Puerto Rico after saying that he was being followed by intel agencies, and that he was probably going to be suicided soon. And then they did something where they like.
But wait, hold on. But MakerDAO's still around and successful, but they had bumps in the road, right? But they ultimately.
Their bump in the road was that they couldn't maintain an algorithmic stablecoin successfully. They had to back their stablecoin with other stablecoins.
Which is really funny.
Yeah.
It's wow. Okay.
I do
That's
have a
pretty-
couple super chats here that have been sitting here for a while. Let me go ahead and pull these up. Cyrus tipped $5. I believe that silver is the most undervalued asset on the planet. A lot of people do, I'm sure. There is a concerted effort to suppress the price by the bankers, technologists, and military-industrial complex that depend on silver being cheap, despite increasing demand/supply deficits.
They're winning. They're
Need
winning.
my
They're
damn
able
silver to
suppress
go
it.
up. So true,
Here's the-
brother. They're putting down my silver.
Here's the problem. They demonetized silver, and it's been continually demonetizing ever since 1965. And because nobody like gold is still heavily monetized because of its like value to weight ratio. And so you still have central banks that hold shitloads of gold. You have China, they're always buying gold, and the Russians buy gold, and Indians love gold, and everyone loves gold. Okay. But silver, like nobody really gives a shit about silver. Everyone's using it for electronics. So it has a very high commodity value demand, but it doesn't have the monetary aspect of its price component. That monetary aspect of its price component has been slowly dying decade after decade as people realize that it's never getting remonetized, not as long as the current cabal is in power. So that's the problem with silver. It's like, yes, they're suppressing it and they're winning. And I don't see how that's going to change anytime soon. So just keep that in mind.